Hello everyone, welcome to Temple of Akasha, the home of embodied spirituality with me, Natasha. So this is going to be a very personal and profound share on something that has emerged for me very recently with regards to twin flame, an insight, an understanding, a kind of mind-blowing embodied recognition of the sanctity of this path that was illuminated to me on August 5th, so just in the run-up to Lion's Gate. And this is very much a personal, embodied transmission. It's not necessarily a teaching. I'm not claiming to know the absolute truth, but I feel that what I'm going to share today will be helpful, perhaps, to help those of you on a genuine path of twin flame deepen in your understanding and perhaps help you reconnect with the innate knowing that true, genuine twin flame dynamics, connections, this path of mastery is an honor, a privilege, and a very deep, sacred, holy responsibility to be a steward of this level of love. To be stewards of these templates of unconditional love, to be stewards and conduits for this level of divinity, or I don't want to make it sound exclusive, but for this level of innocence in love, to embody this, to bring it through, to model it, to anchor it. So I'm going to try and make this something that you can track easily and follow along with easily. Before I share this experience with you, let me just briefly set the context for what I'm about to share. In the run-up to Lion's Gate, a lot of heart purification has been happening for me. The Kundalini has been working on my solar plexus and heart kind of in tandem for over a year, really intensely, and it's now moved to my heart space more intensely. This has been happening for a while, but what started to happen more recently is that the purification has deepened to actually the back of my heart. So this is uncharted territory for me, in that I'm very used to occupying the front of the heart center, the sides even of the heart center. But going to the back feels like diving into an ocean, a deep ocean that I've never explored or touched on, that's so vast it's almost a bit ominous, but it's not ominous, right? Because it's the heart space, but it just, to me, that is the level of depth slash vastness slash sanctity that we're dealing with when we're going to when we're journeying to the depths of the heart space. I don't think we can ever truly know how expansive this territory is. And so the Kundalini has been taking me to the back of the heart, purifying very old content from the back of my heart, bringing to my awareness subconscious content across lifetimes, across eons even, that has been lodged, blocking the wisdom, the love, the light of the heart. And so in the run-up to Lion's Gate, I was going through a purification of deep grief. Lots of just, really mourning the pain of impermanence across experiences I've had recently, across lifetimes even. And then I hit on more grief with regards to my twin. And I've been on this journey for 5.5 years now. He and I are in a state of what feels like to me very beautiful harmony in our separation, of mutual understanding, of mutual respect. It's taken us a long time and a lot of work to get to this place. And so when I hit on this grief, it was maybe unexpected, because I thought at a conscious level I had purged and purified a lot of the grief of being in separation and of the loss of our physical connection. So I journeyed into this grief, and this grief was right at the back of my heart, and I let it move, and I was shown an image of a queen crying, very clearly a queen, in agony, absolute devastation. Now, I wasn't sure if this was a past life visual or if this was almost an archetype that I was just being kind of shown the image of to help me connect to the frequency. But this was the pain of such tremendous loss. And it seems synonymous with a past life that I've touched on with my twin, where we were, I don't want to say, I don't know if it was royalty, it's hard for me to pinpoint, but we were wealthy. And I lost him in that life. He died, and the heartbreak was so destructive that in that life I felt so tangibly that I lost the will to live without him present. I'm going to get emotional. So I was purging like this deep pain of losing him, this deep, deep pain of losing him. And I wasn't initially sure, why that life was shown to me specifically, but I knew that I was being asked to clear the pain of this grief of losing him that has been, seeded many, many lifetimes ago. And so I was journeying through this grief and mourning, and as I deepened into my heart, I was then taken to a place that I've never been before in my heart, but I've touched on it. So earlier this year, over the winter season, I moved through a conscious process of recognizing that the love I feel for my twin and the non-physical marriage that I feel is present with him is unparalleled, is abiding in that it does not ever waver, and is so holy that when I touched on this knowing earlier in the year, I moved through a brief period of surrendering to and knowing that there is no one else. There never was anyone else from the moment I met him, and there may never be anyone else. And I was actually on my bleed when this came to me, and this is always the time when these deep realizations come to me. It's when I'm in my most surrendered state, egoically. And so this recognition came that there is a marriage established between us. We both feel it, non-physically. And while the physical conditions don't reflect that, it's felt in such a way that, at that point earlier in the year, I had surrendered to it, and then got to a point where it felt disempowering to wait for him for my personal process. So I communicated that and said that I needed to kind of be clear that I was going to be open to moving on. And of course, he's wonderful and supportive of that, and we both agreed that we have to move on with our own personal process given the physical limitations. And so now we arrive back at the heart space, at the back of the heart space, in this journey that I was taken to a few days ago, and I was taken to a chamber. And so this was the space that I touched on earlier in the year, but I didn't see it, and I wasn't taken inside it. I just touched on the knowing that it was there. So I was taken inside this chamber. And, I've got goosebumps. So I was inside this chamber. This chamber is quite small and very dark and made of stone floors, stone walls. Inside the chamber, there are inscriptions all around the walls, but I can't see them that clearly because it's really dimly lit. There's like kind of fire torches on the walls. And inside this chamber, there are jaguars pacing. So when I was first taken into the chamber, immediately what was the first kind of recognition was the fact that I was surrounded by jaguars, black jaguars or panthers. and they were almost blending into the darkness, and it was just their eyes. I could see their eyes piercing through the darkness and looking at me very, very clearly. And while it was startling, because it was a very, very vivid scene, it was also, there was an innate sense of knowing that these jaguars were not there to harm me, that they were there to protect whatever this chamber was holding and containing. So these jaguars were pacing. The chamber is imbued with roses, the frequency of the rose, red roses everywhere. And when I was taken into this chamber initially, I was sat cross-legged on the floor, on the stone. I felt the coolness of it. I felt kind of the dampness of it, as though it was very deep underground. And I noticed, I could sense, it was kind of not as clear when I looked down, but I could sense that I was in like lingerie, like a very delicate, fine black lingerie. And so I wasn't looking around the chamber while I was in it. I was kind of aware of a scene to the left side. I was aware of my body. And then I became aware of the presence of my twin sat opposite me, and he was wearing white. But I couldn't see him clearly, nor could I look up clearly. So I was almost like kind of at this angle where I was looking down to the left side. I could sense that there was white, that he was clothed in white. I knew it was his frequency. I knew it was him, but I couldn't look at him. And I didn't know consciously why I couldn't look at him at the time. All I knew was that I was in a chamber that was our marriage chamber. And then words came through confirming this. And the words that first came through were, this marriage was ordained long before you came into form. And it kind of these words, again, it's like how the intuitive self, the higher self speaks to us. It can be in many forms, but it was a knowing that came through as kind of almost auditory, that this marriage had been ordained long before we'd come into form. And it made sense, because when I was in this chamber, I cannot stress how much I felt God's presence, to the degree where I almost felt unworthy of being inside this chamber. It felt so holy and so sacred to be in this space, to be given access to this. And when I was sat in the chamber, I felt so humble and small, not in a disempowered way, but just I was aware of my smallness in context to, or in relation to God, and to the vastness of the divine source. I was this being in the presence of God. And I felt the significance of it, being sat in this chamber. And this knowing comes to me that this marriage has been ordained long before we came into form. And these were the words that came through. Stop longing, stop searching, stop seeking. The union is assured. And again, they weren't so much just words. I'm trying to communicate what is really very abstract. It was a knowing. It was an embodied knowing, like my entire being was echoing this sense. So what I wrote here after that was, continue with the individual mission, embody the knowing, and hold the frequency of the marriage in the heart center. And again, the words came through, it was ordained long before you came into form. So I've been exposed to this chamber that I've always sensed unconsciously, because I've always known the sanctity of my connection with my twin. I came into conscious contact with this knowing that there is a marriage that's been established non-physically earlier in the year. I was then taken to the chamber a few days ago, shown it, but I couldn't look at my twin in this chamber. And so in the 24 hours that followed, more insight came through. Again, I'm going to call on my journal, because my journal is how I track these things. So what essentially came through in the early hours of the next morning was a vision that I've been tasked with being a steward of unconditional divine love templates here on the planet at this time, as other twins have. And I was told that there are many knights that can take up the mantle of union. And I was shown the imagery of these men in armor that were clearly knights and very honorable in their frequency. But I was told that there is only one king. And I was shown my twin. And so I'm not sure if this was a dream or a vision. Again, it was like so early in the morning. I think it was in that weird stage between, wakefulness and sleep. And so I woke up with kind of deeper ancient knowing and dust landing in my system and moving through the kind of layers of integration of that. And then what came back to me was this sense of, why couldn't I look at him in the chamber? And it kind of started to dawn on me with all of this embodied understanding of the messages I was receiving, that looking at my twin in the chamber was synonymous with, or would be synonymous with, choosing to devote myself wholeheartedly to unconditional love, and more than that, to the wisdom of my heart, which is completely and has always been completely aware of this marriage, and even more than that, to God's will. And so looking at him in the eyes is synonymous with choosing God's will over my ego. So to look at him would mean that I have chosen consciously to acknowledge God's will and transcend my ego, and transcend all the egoic ideas and programs and things that are still in place. And the fact that I couldn't look at him in the chamber was, showing me clearly that I still wasn't ready to transcend my egoic kind of ideas and identity. And so the exploration that followed was, what is standing in the way of me looking at him? Why am I not willing to devote myself to not even him as a person, but to the knowing that I've been tasked with divine union, and that this is a sure thing. This is God's will. There's nothing I can do to fuck it up, to disrupt it, to avoid it. This is the deepest longing of my heart. It's already mine. It's already there. The knowing that it exists is already in place in my heart. There's nothing else to do except follow the guidance in each and every moment that will undoubtedly lead me to either the union with him or union with God, which is actually the primary point of the whole twin flame template. And what came through, which was so profound for me, because I had no conscious awareness of this before, was a fear of his age, because my twin is older than me, significantly older than me. And consciously, that's never been a problem for me. I've never seen that as a barrier. But what started to emerge were all these ego programs around his age, and that I have on some unconscious level held judgment towards him with regards to his age. So therefore I'm not in unconditional love towards him, because unconditional love is love without conditions. And so I couldn't look at him in the eyes because I wasn't in a state of unconditional love for him, because I'm still harboring these unconscious judgments. And so I was moving through all of these judgments, recognizing, gosh, I still hold this sense of egoic fear that, will I still be attracted to him in 10 years' time when he's older? Will he have the energy for me because he's getting older? I want all of these experiences with a partner. Will he be able to provide them for me? You know, there's still all of these, I think, natural, but egoic nonetheless, kind of worries, fears, questions in place that have been dictating on some level my approach towards my relationship with him and our connection. And I felt, understood very clearly that what this twin dynamic is doing is schooling us in what unconditional love means to such a degree that we purify the heart space and become completely surrendered to God's will. So this is essentially a path of transcending the ego and being conduits for God's will and the heart's desires, which are seeded, from the heart of God. So, of course, there are many paths to awakening. There are many paths to illumination, to coming back to the heart. The twin flame dynamic, in my understanding, in experience, is one path of mastery and awakening, and it is also specifically the path that has been designed for us to anchor the new templates for how we love and are in connection on the planet, and how sacred connection is, because we've forgotten. And so when I realized that I'd been unconsciously harboring this judgment around his age towards him, I cried so much. It felt like a betrayal. It felt like a betrayal of the love I have for him to even judge him at that level. Because the love that my heart knows and feels towards him is so pure that it's like, how could I let something as egoic and lowly as that tarnish what I feel for this person and what I know my soul is like, not bound to. That sounds, that doesn't sound particularly sovereign, but it's like the marriage, the dance of souls, the dance that has occurred, the union, the unification that is already on some level already in place between us is so pure that the deepest knowing of my heart is that no other egoic conditions or form conditions matter. And so the reason I wanted to share this is because, as you may already know, I've mentioned in other videos that I don't know whether or not for certain twin flame is a person or an energy. And I've mentioned in my previous video about soul connections that I am very much an advocate for inner union and focusing on our own journey of empowerment and not becoming attached to another being, not becoming attached to an outcome. Interesting how the motorbike revved at that point. That's source saying, yeah, that's really important. Don't get attached to the outcome. Release all attachments. That's so much a part of this process of returning to unconditional love, because it's the ego that attaches. It's the ego that works from attachment. It's the ego that works from scarcity, lack of communion with source, a sense of separateness from source, and therefore feels lack and therefore feels the need to attach. So what this twin connection is doing is purifying us of attachments, purifying us of egoic desires, so that we can become completely attuned to and aligned with the heart's wisdom and become conduits for unconditional love, become conduits for heart energy, for heart-centeredness. So this is not child's play, this connection. This to me is a very holy and sacred initiation, a very holy and sacred mission. And that leads me on actually to just mentioning a couple of other things that have come through in the wake. It was actually the morning of Lionsgate, in the early hours of the morning of Lionsgate. I have not been sleeping in these energies very well. I've been in deep channeling states for a lot of it. And so what came through, along with some understanding of my twin and I both share Lyran origins. It seems to be very high-ranking Lyran origins. So what came through was, you must remain free of attachment or it will pollute the guidance of the heart. You must help him to remember he has forgotten the ancient codes that are sealed in fate. So that have been sealed in fate long before this time and space. You must awaken his creatrix codes. So I've been given the guidance to sit in ceremony with him, if and when he's open to it. And it's what also came through was, it's much bigger than you, the mission, much bigger than you can see at this time, and it involves both of you working as a team. You must remain unattached and in pure heart consciousness to stay aligned with the mission and to drive it forwards. The birthing portal for creation is open. And so what has also become apparent in the wake of this understanding of the chamber and the fact that these unions have been ordained by God long before we came into form, they are... for me, it's very hard to put into words kind of the level of understanding I have of the energetics of it. It's hard to translate what I'm feeling, because I feel the magnitude of it, but I don't know how to put it into words. I sense that at one point with the twin, there was an actual split that occurred, perhaps from the oversoul splitting into individualized souls. I don't know. Again, I'm kind of being shown aspects of the journey as I go deeper and further along. But what has become apparent in the wake of all of this insight is that regardless of the state of the physical union on earth, right, whether you're in separation, whether you are in contact, that nothing is happening kind of in your relationship at a deeper level, whether one person is doing the work and one person isn't, if it's a true twin dynamic, what has become really, really clear to me is that non-physically, the marriage, the union is already established. And so non-physically, the twins are working in the astral together already. And this is really clear to me. My twin activated my Kundalini in a very powerful way. So my Kundalini was already stirring. That's what led me to find my twin, because of the nature of his work. When I met him, it then activated my Kundalini. The activation of my Kundalini has allowed me to come back into an empowered space, right? It's activated my divine feminine template. It's reawakened the fullness of who I am. So his presence in the physical has given me the biggest gift possible. He has literally awakened the force of creation within me. He has awakened my divinity. And now I've been told, and even during our periods of separation, the love he holds me in is beautiful and pure, and I feel non-physically the containment. Like, that's the masculine principle. It contains, it holds, it protects, it loves, it keeps safe, and I feel that non-physically from him, even though maybe physically there isn't evidence of him being a partner that protects and holds and provides for and whatnot. Non-physically, I feel that. And the guidance I received was that it's now my time, because it's like a tag team. One holds the other, one inspires the other, one awakens the other. And just as he's held me, I've supported the awakening of his heart. And now as he's been holding me energetically during our times of separation for me to blossom and to come into the reclamation of my fullness, it's now my time. The guidance I've got is that to channel physically codes to him for his awakening and for his ascension process. Again, free will choice. I don't know if that's something that will come about. It really, it depends on when he's ready to receive that. But that's the guidance I've been given. And in the wake of this contact with the chamber, I feel this humility that it's not my place to tarnish any meeting with him with egoic desire for him. It's not my place to tarnish or impose my own agenda on this connection anymore, because it's so easy to do that in these connections and in any connections, right? To try and forecast, to plan, to coerce, to manipulate, even at subtle levels when we're not conscious of it. I feel so strongly that now I'm in service to my heart, and because I've touched on the presence of God in maybe the most profound way I've ever consciously done, right? Through journeying within, without substances, right? Just going into my heart in such a deep way. It's like I feel God so strongly now in my life. From that moment of the chamber, I have felt God behind me. And it's almost like I am now walking humble on this path of surrendering my will to thy will, handing it over, knowing that I can't possibly know what is destined for our connection. I can't possibly know how it's going to go at an earthly level. It doesn't seem we will come together in this life. And it's not my place to impose any egoic attachment to that idea or to an idea of us being together. Basically, it's just honoring heart wisdom in each moment and honoring the knowing of the heart. And so that's probably what I want to end this with. That in relation to the twin connection, the heart knows. The heart knows the moment you meet your twin. The heart knows however far along you are in your journey, however polarized it can get, however fragmented it can seem, however jarring it can be for the human, because these relationships, like, they turn you inside out to purify you. So they trigger you beyond belief. They bring up everything beyond belief in terms of wounding and limiting beliefs. These connections are hard taskmasters when it comes to shadow work. Regardless of what the 3D presentation is physically, the heart, if we really take the time to move beyond all of these kind of like distortions, the heart knows. The heart knows the truth. The heart knows the presence of a non-physical marriage. The heart knows the nature of this connection, whether it's one soul split into two bodies, whether it's a unique soul resonance, whether it's, I don't know, right? I'm still trying to understand consciously what this energy I feel for my twin is, but the heart knows this, and it's maybe not even for the human to understand fully. We are just being asked to be stewards of this knowing, to live from this knowing, to embody this knowing, and to let that knowing mobilize us. Let that level of knowing inform everything we do. Can we live in service to the knowing of the heart? And I've spoken about this before. A lot of my teachings and my sharings are around living heart-centered. But the depth to which I understand this now is, it has been very humbling and profound for me. And I feel God's hand in all of this so deeply that there has been a surrender happening in my being over the last few days, where I know that not only in relation to my twin, but in relation to everything in my life, my physical reality, money, work, all of my relationships, it's like coming into contact with this union chamber, and God's will has assured me in a really embodied sense that there's no lack, that all the visions that I hold in my heart that I've come into contact with, they're already mine, that there's no lack, there's no separation. And I feel possibly for the first time in my life, like this real collapsing and disillusion of separation from God's knowing, God's will. There's just an embodiment, a deeper level of embodiment in my heart space of God's will. and a surrender without egoic resistance, at least at this point. I'm sure my ego will find many ways to kick up and try and lead me down cul-de-sacs, but it feels like a real deepening of embodied knowing. And so what I want to leave with is your heart knows the truth. But it takes a lot of work, a lot of inner work, a lot of inner alchemy, a lot of devotion, bhakti, to truth, to humility, to love. Like, we have to be devoted to that. That has to be our place of genuine orientation if we are to uncover the truth of the heart and to live from it. We have to devote ourselves to the process of moving through all the obscurities and the fallacies of the ego. So that's where I am right now. I've just had Lionsgate yesterday as well. The experience that I've been moving through over the last days, the last few days, the last few weeks, the last month, it's been so profound I can't even put it into words. But this chamber experience has really, I feel like it's taken me to a deeper level of understanding about twin flame, about the sanctity of what it means to be stewards of this love. And I'm in the process of writing my first book inspired by this connection. So and I'm channeling an oracle deck. There's so much creativity that comes when I connect to my twin. He's my muse. He always has been. And when I connect to the love I feel for him, which is God's love, really, he's the closest point of contact I've ever had with God through another person. Creating is effortless. And that's the thing with these twin flame connections. You know, we think it's about a physical union, and that might be, you know, that to me is my heart's highest intention. To live in a union with him would be heaven on earth. But actually, what is even more profound and important, really, than just like a physical relationship, is how these connections awaken us to our true potential, to our divine potential. They activate those organic soul templates so that we can live mission. And we think that maybe living mission means being in physical union with our twins and doing some joint work together, but we're already serving mission together non-physically by activating each other and awakening each other. And that's so beautiful. So I hope this sharing has been helpful. I hope it's been illuminating for you as it has been for me. And I would love to hear any thoughts or comments that you have on this, or any experiences that perhaps mirror this. Any insights you share are always valuable. I read them all, even if I don't respond. So thank you so much for being with me. And yeah, I look forward to connecting with you again in the next transmission.